Welcome to the Mama's Well podcast, where we are digging deep into the gifts and the gaps of foster care and adoption. I'm Tara Hutton, and I'm glad you're here. Mama's Well. Yes, she is. Hey guys, it's episode number 50, and I am 50 years old. I turned 50 years old this week. And I feel great. I am excited. I'm probably, I'm probably more like me than I've ever been, learning to know who it is I really am. And my guest today helped me with that. And she is the adoptive mom of a daughter, Abby, with some extreme special needs, and the wife to an incredible songwriter, Sean McConnell. Mary Susan McConnell is my guest today. She is the host of the Mama Bear podcast, where she is just building this incredible community of other moms who are raising children with profound circumstances and some very unique needs. And as you know, if you are in that same boat, that can be a really scary, a lot of fear involved with that, and lonely. And so Mary Susan has created the Mama Bear podcast to just wrap her arms around a community of people and to serve and to give and to let them know that they're not alone. And so she also does a lot of coaching. And that's how I got to know Mary Susan. I applied for one of her she called them the 4-week intensive coaching program. And I signed up last summer. And wow, she really challenged me and pushed me very compassionately and reminded me that, you know what? I have something to give and I have something to offer. And that was the birth of the Mama's Well podcast. So I was thrilled when she said yes to being on this 50th episode today. So welcome, Mary Susan. Well, hey, Mary Susan, how are you?
I'm great. I'm here with you. I've got my iced coffee. I'm good.
I had my beverage of my choice. As you say, it was a smoothie. It's now gone.
Oh, that's a good drink.
Yeah, I feel better. So welcome. Thank you for joining me. I'm going to go and tattle on myself. And we tried this last week. We had a wonderful conversation. It was so rich. I loved every second of it. And as soon as we hung up, I realized that I never pressed record. And wow, I beat myself up for a while.
I hate that you beat yourself up. I mean, the other side of that story is that I knew the whole time we were talking that my microphone was coming in and out. So I had already texted you, if we need to re-record this, let me know. So I thought it would be on my end.
Yeah, no, it wasn't. And, you were so gracious and, I was able to let it go. And, this morning I had anxiety of like, okay, I got to make sure, I want to do this right. I want to get this right. And I started thinking, and I turned 50 on Sunday.
Woohoo! Big day. Congratulations.
And so I have these like more grown-up thoughts these days, because I'm like a grown-up now, I think. And I actually woke up earlier in the week about 2 a.m. And I mean, my mind was just flooded with all these things that I've learned and that I'm learning, and I went in my office and I started writing them down. I'm like, there's at least 50 things that I've learned in my first 50 years. And I started, and I just wrote and wrote. And I got to about 35 or 37, something like that. And then I got tired. It was about 4 a.m. I went and slept on the couch. But one of the things, and I posted it this week, is that the things that I thought would destroy me are actually the things that have made me stronger. And, my dad committed suicide. My mom died of cancer, just raising children who've experienced such trauma and all of these really hard things in my life um, are actually the greatest gifts to me. And in the moment and in the time, you don't see it. And it kind of reminded me of what happened the other day. You know, like you think if you just do if everything right, if you just, you know, but that's not how life works. Like life brings you what you need.
Right.
And so I thought today, that's what I want to talk about. And so, you know, raising kids, you know, I want you to tell your story, but you're raising a daughter who's got some really, you know, extensive lifelong needs. And honestly, we are too. And I think sometimes we can get really frightened and feel lonely. And I think you're the perfect person to have this conversation with. Will you join me in something like that?
Yes, I would love to. And thank you for sharing what you just did. I mean, I think there's such wisdom in that, and I'm always inspired by you, and I appreciate what you offer constantly. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. So, Mary Susan, tell us a little bit about how you met your Prince Charming of a man, Sean McConnell. And I told everybody a little bit about you and about him in the introduction, but I'd like to hear from you how you guys met and what had you fall in love with that man?
We were very young, and I had not ever been someone who pictured myself married. Like, I didn't picture a wedding. I didn't picture being married. It was just not on my radar of anything growing up at all. So it was a total shock to me to meet someone at 19 that I was like, oh yeah, you're 100% my person, like my husband. So we met sophomore year of college. He walked into a class that I was taking that I didn't have to take. I was studying to be a middle school teacher. He was studying in music business, and we both had just seen this class, decided to take it, and it was kind of like a religious studies class from a historical perspective on Jesus, and we were both just interested in it. And my good friend Bethany, who later became my maid of honor, is the one that told me about the class. We decided to take it together. It was a night class. And when he walked in, she goes, oh my gosh, I know him. I've seen him in concert. I know his music. And she started to tell me about him. And he handed out little flyers. This was before social media, for a gig that he had coming up. And she was like, we're going. We went. I quickly understood her obsession with his music, and became equally as obsessed. And it just became a really fun thing to go to this class at night, and we started kind of becoming friends. And then the three of us would go grab a bite to eat afterwards, and eventually we started dating, and 6 months later, I want to say we were engaged, and 6 months after that we were married. So we were extremely young, but what a fun, I always say, for us, it was such a fun way to do life together, because here we are. I still consider myself incredibly young, but we've had almost 20 years of marriage under our belt. So it's a lot of fun doing life with him.
Yeah. And how cool it is to meet that person, and you get to experience, I mean, you're growing up together. And
yeah, exactly.
So that's awesome. And I know that you guys I love that you met in that class, because one of the things that Sean's music always does for me, it validates questions that I think sometimes that we're afraid to say, particularly about our faith and about how we see God, and most importantly, like how we see that he sees us.
Right.
And and that's something that as I've grown older, I've really, really began to question a lot of the things that I've thought
Mm-hmm.
that I was so certain about.
Mm-hmm.
I've let myself be curious about. And Sean's
Yes.
music just like he just does that. It just
Yeah.
oozes out of him.
It does, and it always has, and that's why even at 19, what he was singing about, I remember us just sitting there, my girlfriend and I, looking at the lyrics, being like, we got to ask him about that. We got to ask him about that. I mean, he was already presenting those types of questions,
Yeah.
and to see the work that goes behind the scenes to do that was, that exact, what you just described has been from day one of me knowing him.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. And it's so authentic and it's so
Mm-hmm.
real and it's so
Mm-hmm.
raw. And I just think that's so much of what particularly our churches and
Mm-hmm.
our Christians, which is most of my world,
Right.
we're afraid to ask
Right.
those questions as if
Mm-hmm.
he's not big enough for
Mm-hmm.
that kind of question. So, man, I
Yeah.
could stay here all day because this is like right in my space, but I want to keep
Mm-hmm.
going because you're that richness has gone even deeper.
Mm.
Um, so I know you've told me before that you guys always wanted to adopt, right? Because
Yes.
this is the part of your story that I really want to delve into.
Yes.
So
Mm-hmm.
pick up from you're in college, you get married. I think you said that was like a year maybe total.
Yeah,
All
maybe.
right.
Yeah, because we did the last few years of college together, married, which was a lot of fun.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, I had, as a kid, I always picture myself adopting one little girl. I had a dream when I was about 10 that I was holding a child that I felt really connected with, and I knew she was adopted. And that feeling, that maternal feeling, was like my only experience with that. Like all my friends were playing baby dolls and playing house and putting pillows under their shirts pretending they're pregnant. Like I just had no interest in it whatsoever. Like I had no interest. I wanted to be outside, ride horses, climb trees, dance, but like playing family to me was the most boring choice. I was like, please don't ask me to do this. And then I had this dream, and I was like, oh, this version, this feeling, I get. So then I kind of started to play that kind of idea in my head, and it just kind of continued. So by the time I was an adult, that was still what was there. Like I had no um the draw, the maternal draw for me was the idea of adoption. So when I met Sean, I mentioned this, and he was equally as interested in adoption and excited about that. So by the time we'd been married, maybe 6, 7 years, we decided, okay, now we're going to start thinking about kids. And it was just kind of a natural flow into the idea of adoption being the way we entered that world of children. And maybe biological later, maybe not, like it was just kind of, we're going to start our family start growing our family into the world of children we already had a family, the two of us, but like growing that with adopting. And so that kind of led us into that new stage of what does that look like, and all the paperwork and all the things, and eventually it led to our daughter Abiella, who most often we call Abby.
Did you always know, because I'm going to let the cat out of the bag, that this was an international adoption. Did you always know that was the path for you because of the dream? Because was the child in the dream an international?
The child in the dream did not look like Abby.
Okay.
But now I had other dreams where a child did look like Abby, but this one, when I was a child, did not look like Abby, but I knew based on, she reminded me a lot of another friend I had like a family friend who had adopted. So that's kind of in my dream. I just knew that was the relationship. And when we started into the road of adoption, we looked, including, I mean, we were open to anything. There was so many barriers that we had to consider, mainly based on our age, because by the time we were ready to adopt, we were still in our mid-20s, and there was a lot of, you know, requirements, and there was a lot of, but I had always been kind of open to either, like here, international, and same with Sean.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was just a variety of unique circumstances that I would call divinely led, that led us to AB.
Okay. You got to share them.
I will. I mean, I find myself when I start to tell the story, I think, how can I break this down into a few minutes instead of a few hours? But so we had started the adoption process. We were on the waiting list, and we had decided to pursue an adoption in Ghana, West Africa. And so we were on that waiting list and had our home study done and all the things. And our stateside coordinator had gone over, taken about 700 pictures that she had uploaded to a private account for waiting families to look through. And it wasn't to look through for children that were available for adoption. It was just simply like, here's the country, here's a lot of things that you may, it was pictures of the beach and a few kids, but it wasn't presenting anything. It was just, here's an album of my personal trip if you want to look through it. So I was looking through it, and I knew I'd gotten to, because 700 pictures is a lot, I knew I had gotten to a place in the album where she was touring a really large orphanage, and she was in the part of the orphanage that were for kids with disabilities. And so I knew that was basically where I was in the album. Mm-hmm. And this child pops up on the screen, and I just felt this immediate connection, like, whoo, oh my gosh, that's her, oh my gosh. And I honestly, I think I kept it to myself only because it was so powerful that I knew if this is, I just followed my intuition, and it was, if this is real, if this child is to be a part of our family and what I'm feeling, if I'm understanding it correctly, then for me, it will not be a me going to my husband and saying, can we please do this? What do you think about this? He'll feel the same thing. Like, that was just a knowing that I felt. And so later, maybe a week or two later, I really don't know how long it was. It's all fuzzy, but I woke up in the middle of the night, and kind of like you just described, and it was about, I don't know, 1, 2 a.m. And I got up. I felt this like need to go to the living room, pull out my laptop. So everything's dark. I'm in there on the couch. My laptop's open. I felt like I should go to my coordinator's blog. So I did. And now this blog is public, and it says it's a post about this child that they're looking for a home. And all because it was public, all they could show were the eyes. And I knew this was the same eyes from the child I'd seen earlier. And I know nothing about this story. Like, I didn't know if she was even available for adoption. I just knew she was in this album. So I immediately knew it was her. And I kept, it's like dark of night. I'm just reading her story. And it said, we think she has cerebral palsy, microcephaly, but you will not know anything else until you're advocating on her behalf. Like, that's it. There's going to be no more information. So a family's going to have to be open to mystery and really not knowing her specific health conditions. And then I just finally, it was this very strange thing, but it's what it was. So I kept feeling like I saw the letter A hovering about right here, which is so bizarre in like my mind's eye. And eventually I was like, my gosh, what is that? And I saw ABIELLA, and I thought, is that a place? Is that anything? Am I making this up? So I Googled, and I started to sound it out, and I was like, well, I'm going to take the I out because Abella is easier to say. And then something was like, no, spell it the way you see it. What are you thinking? So I typed it the way I thought, Abiella, hit enter, and it came up for, it is a name and it's a girl's name and it means God is my father. And I just was so stunned that I'm looking at this child on a screen who needs a home, who needs parent, and God is my father. I mean, I just was so stunned. It was like, I felt like I had, like a lightning bolt had just hit me. Like my whole body felt like it was jolted with electricity. So I ran to the bedroom, woke up Sean, told him the experience. And I said, again, all I'm saying is I'm having this bizarre connection, this like bizarre but beautiful connection with this child. And then I did the same thing. I just kind of waited back to see if things like this would start to happen to him. And they did. So it was a few weeks later that we had enough of these experiences that we both just 100% felt it's time to move forward with this. And we did. We emailed, it was like 11 p.m. or something. We emailed the coordinator. I said, I've found your blog. Tell me if this is, what's the story of this child? Is she in the same situation that you described a few weeks ago? And I think it was 1 a.m. on a weekend. And she wrote back, oh my gosh, this is unbelievable. We've been looking for a family. You've been right here the whole time. And it wasn't but a few weeks later that we were on a flight to go meet her, because even though we wouldn't be able to get through court or any of those things, we really wanted to obviously meet her because you want to meet this beautiful child, but we also wanted to start to educate ourselves about what life would look like with her very unique circumstances. And so we contacted Vanderbilt Children's Hospital and got a pediatrician that's still our pediatrician today. And at the time, Abby was 1, now Abby's 10. She's still our pediatrician, and she just walked us through. They were so great. So it took 3 trips in about a year for Abby to come home. And when she came home, we immediately went to that pediatrician, and at the hospital, we were admitted and life began with our little family of 3. But now, I mean, she's at school right now. She loves life. She rides horses. She has a bright, hot pink, sparkly wheelchair. She speaks in a lot of ways. Words is not one of them. She'll look one way for yes, one way for no. She's very vocal about her emotions, whether she's really, really happy or really not. But she is just a light, just a pure joy. And it's been the best. I mean, it's been hard. It's been very hard, but it's also been the best. And
Yeah.
she is the most magical child.
I think that's beautiful. And I'm just like kind of stuck in that, hearing you say, I mean, you described it in a lot of different ways, but like you first of all, you saw this child from 2 totally different sources, right?
Right.
And then,
Right.
and then one of the sources, you only saw her eyes because of confidentiality, I guess, reasons. But the thing that I just want to touch on, and it deserves so much more than touch, but you're listening to yourself. Like you're trusting that there's something inside that's speaking to you. And I think that's so powerful. And I think that we don't all come to life with that. I know as a child, for me, my mom, I don't even know all the trauma, but whatever my mom experienced, it was very difficult for her to be with her own emotions and her own feelings and her own thoughts. And she wasn't in touch with herself, and she didn't teach me how to do that. Matter of fact, what I learned is don't trust yourself. And so just as I'm moving into the second half of my life, like that really sticks out to me, because that's so powerful. That you weren't looking at the checklist of, oh, this is too hard, or this is too this, or this is too that. You trusted something inside that you couldn't explain.
Yeah.
That's so
Mhm.
beautiful.
Mm.
Have you always been in touch with yourself like that?
I mean, and I've never spoken publicly about this, and I'll keep it really vague, but when I was a kid, there was a knowing that I needed to leave a situation because it was going to be very dangerous very fast. And I heard very clearly that. And then we did leave the situation. We listened to that. And it ended up being very dangerous very fast. And so I felt like by the skin of my teeth, by listening, I was safe. And so I felt really compelled from a child on to understand that voice, to know that voice, to respect that voice, to discern that voice, and to know um, what's a loving voice and what is worry and anxiety, and um, to know the difference, and to really know when a what I would call God is speaking to me, and holding a space for that, and really learning the beauty of blind trust. And I mean, even with Sean, like when I met him, there was nothing in me that was wanting to, like I said, be married until I met him. But I knew it was I had a similar, just like, that's the person, that's your person. And so and of course, once I fell in love with him and knew him, I wanted to be married. But I'm saying, like, it was a whole lifetime from that moment when I was a child to this moment with Abby of cultivating what that connection is. So by the time I heard this is your child, I think I was really I trusted myself to know that voice, and I trusted that voice. And that to me made what could feel very scary feel, for me, really pretty safe.
Yeah. That
Like the safest choice.
that is so powerful.
Mm.
And the work that you're doing, the work that the people who are listening to this right now are doing does not make sense.
Mm-hmm.
It does not make sense.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
To a logic, to our mind.
Right.
And so if we don't learn to tap into that that inner knowing, that that trust that you're talking about, like, I don't I don't know. I mean, we're gonna feel trapped, and so yeah, I think that's powerful, and I think it is a practice, like you said, that we cultivate.
Yeah, for sure, practice. Yeah.
And you're so blessed that you had an early start on that. When our young mind, it's a lot easier to do that because there's nobody telling us otherwise.
Right.
But when we get to be adults, there's all this noise from the outside saying, "Oh, no, 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 don't do that, don't do that, don't do that, don't do that," and then you forget to look inside and say, "Ooh, what am I feeling?"
Right.
Yeah. What is this? And I believe it is who you say, and that I believe it's God as well. And just listening to that. We have to be quiet to do that. Wow.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, that's hard.
I guess that's why he wakes people like me up in the middle of the night.
That's right. That's a good point.
When I'm
that's
quiet.
A good point. Yeah.
So, okay. Wow. Okay. So you bring her home, and, man, I kind of, I know the story, so I'm leading you a little bit. But I think you found yourself, probably really, that's frightening. Okay. It's one thing that this institution has been taking care of her. Now, all of a sudden it's young Sean and Mary Susan, who've never had children before.
Oh yeah.
who don't have a clue about medical issues that she has. And
Right.
so, like, wow, okay, where's that small voice now? What's it
Yeah.
telling you to do? Where'd you go
Well,
from there?
we got to the hospital, and thankfully, you know, one of the things that I recognize is different than a lot of people's stories is we had a year without her home to prepare for what we thought her life might look like. So I had a year to look at what are feeding tubes. Do I think she's going to need one? What are signs of aspiration? When I get there, how will I know if she's aspirating? Where do I find, how do people make their homes accessible? What is, I had time to reach out to friends who are raising kids with a similar diagnosis and say, okay, you're 10 years ahead of me. What does your life look like? And I had a chance to do as much try to educate myself. So by the time we got to the hospital and she's admitted, she was 14 pounds, almost 2 years old. And we had to really hop straight into every test, everything, learning about different surgeries, different, what is it feeding to? But I was so grateful, and Sean was too, for her to be with us at the hospital in a place that felt familiar, where we knew how to advocate best we could. But regardless, yes, it was incredibly scary. It was so hard when she's crying and we don't know why. And we're trying to figure that out. And is this reflux or is there something else? And we are in a fog of not sleeping. And I think it was day 6 or 7 in the hospital when I remember we were standing there and Sean looked at me and was like, we have got to find people who are doing this. And I said, I agree with you, but that's like a long shot. Like, when are we ever, like, A, I don't know who these people are. B, I'm an introvert, so this is gonna already push me. C, let's just say we find a support group. Who's gonna be with her? Like, how can we even do this? And so I said out loud, I was like, that sounds great, but I don't know how we'll even do that. Well, right after that, in walks a nurse that we have been told by our former night nurse, you're going to like today's nurse. You haven't had her yet, but I know you're going to really click. So here she comes in, and she had been with us through that day, and I really did like her a lot. She had just such a great energy. She was young. She was our age. She was fun. She was talking to AB in a really great way, super positive, really good energy, comfortable. And Sean had just said this to me. She walks in and she said, I'm assuming you're going to be going home with the feeding tube. Do you want me to teach you how to operate the NG tube, which is the tube that goes through the nose before you get the surgery that goes, through the belly? So I said, yeah, I'm sure we're going home with it, and I would love for you to teach me. And then she looked up at me and Sean, and she said, I just want y'all to know that I know what you're going through. And we were like, what are you talking about? And she said, my husband and I decided to adopt first as well. We adopted a sibling group of 3, and our son has really profound medical needs, seizures, feeding tube, nonverbal, and I know what you're feeling. And I mean, it's a wonder if my knees had been locked, I would have hit the floor. Like, I was so blown away. Sean was too. That this magical woman was standing there with the exact story that we were hoping to find, that we had said was like this long shot, and she's been taking care of our daughter all day. I mean, and I think for me, it was a moment of like, oh, we're being taken care of too. This isn't only taking care of this beautiful child. We are also beautiful children. Like, we are also being taken care of. And I, in that moment, knew that. And that was really powerful for me. And secondly, I felt a wave of, oh my gosh, knowing people who understand this life will be a game changer for us. It changed everything in that 1 second. It changed everything for me. We're not as isolated as it feels. There really are people out there doing this. And she did so much work outside of her shift to create pamphlets and things like this for us to have. And then on her second day with us, she said, well, we're off. I'm going to leave, and they were talking about living life in a camper and doing really cool RV trips. And I was like, you can do this with your life. She was like, yes, you can do this. But beyond that, she said, I also want you to know, I've never worked this floor and I was not on the schedule. I got a feeling, again, with the listening, I got a feeling that I needed to come in. And when I arrived, your night nurse looked at me and said, you're going to love this family. And again, it was just like this. And I've never seen her since, but just knowing she was out there was the greatest gift. And to the point that, I still get chills thinking about it. And just that her presence in our life was, I call her the angel nurse. Like for a while I was like, she may have just walked out the parking lot and then, her wings popped down. She flew up to heaven. Like, I don't even know. I don't know. But it was just the most incredible shift in our lives. And from that point on, things look different. Even that quickly.
Wow. Gosh, this is like the theme of today.
Yeah.
I know it
Yeah.
is. And I'm sitting here thinking, and it's in, when we really hear things well, when we're feeling really powerless. Like
Yes.
when we can't, find, the saddest thing I've ever seen is an incredibly wealthy person that just like is miserable, right? Because there's always something to try to medicate the misery. There's a bigger boat, a bigger house, a bigger vacation, a bigger something, a better something.
Right.
But when you're in a place of nothing, when you feel like alone in a hospital room, or when you feel like you have read every book known to man about parenting and you still feel like you cannot reach a child, or whatever, that's the place where we're just like, your hands are up in the air and you're like,
right,
you get quiet and you hear. And
yes, you do.
People like the angel nurse who's been there,
right,
she's probably been practicing the listening too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's
Thank
profound.
God. Yes.
That's profound. And so, it's been a long journey, like a lot of medical needs, seizures, hospital trips, emergency rooms, ambulance rides. A lot of that. And I've heard stories, and I mentioned this in the intro, but you are the host of the Mama Bear podcast. And so you tell a lot of these stories there. How did that, I know you said when we talked earlier this week that that lady, what was her name? The angel nurse?
I don't even know.
Oh my gosh.
I really don't even know.
Let's just call her Angel Nurse.
We'll call her Angel Nurse.
So Angel Nurse, didn't you say that she's kind of a catalyst for the beginning of the Mama Bear podcast?
Yes, she is. And when we got home from that Angel Nurse experience and life picked up as it does, again, with the listening, our stateside coordinator, social worker for the adoption, had a few visits left. And every time she would visit, she'd say, have you met another family? Have you met another family? And I would always say, well, online I have, which again, my online friends are a massive part of my life. So I'm so grateful. But she kept saying, but have you seen a family face to face where you can feel like you're all in a similar situation? And I was like, no, I haven't. And when would I find the time to do that? Like how and when and who? So finally on that last visit, I said, well, do you know a family that looks like ours? And she said, well, yeah, actually I do. Do you care if I give them your number? And I was like, no, that'd be great. And she left and I went on to packing. We were moving houses to a house that would be more accessible for AB with a few more resources. And so I'm packing and I hear like a ding. And I look down and it's a Facebook message from someone. And she goes, she tells me she had gotten my number from our coordinator. And she says, you're never going to believe this, but I know you. And I know Sean from music. And Sean's song, one of Sean's songs, is in our daughter's adoption video.
Wow.
And it was like, what? And she goes, can I call you? And I was like, please. And I just remember pacing the floor, and her daughter also had a feeding tube, also has a wheelchair, also has very similar circumstances. And she said, and I told her, I said, well, I mean, I was just dumbfounded, but to speak to someone who understood, and her daughter's a few years older, so they had already experienced with what does preschool look like? How will your child be fed if they're not eating by mouth in a cafeteria? All these questions I had. It was such a huge relief. And when I said, I said, I see in one of your pictures, because I'm scrolling through her Facebook pictures and stuff. I said, oh my gosh, we just tried this piece of equipment that you have, but we don't think our insurance will cover it right now. And she was like, oh, well, we're about to go into surgery, hip surgery. We can't even use it for 3 months. Do you want me to drop it off at your house?
Oh
And I said,
gosh.
well, that's a magical idea, but we're moving and I don't want it to get messed up. She said, well, where are you moving to? And I told her, and she goes, oh, I live 10 minutes from there. Tell me your first day and I'll drop it off. So on my first day in my new home, I woke up and she was there an hour later with her daughter, and we don't even have furniture in the house, and we're on the floor and she's feeding her daughter through a G tube. I'm holding my daughter with a G tube. And Sean walks in and sees these two beautiful children on the ground being fed in the same way. And we're like talking as moms. And I thought he was going to pass out too. And we just couldn't get over it. But from there, that's how we began to get to know more and more people. And I understood the power of having people in your daily life who get your life that you would already want to be friends with. You know, it's like you already click on a number of things. But by the way, you know, so I can text her a funny meme and then I can be like, how are seizures today? And we can be like, what do you think? Full moon? What do you think's going on? Have you tried this med? What do you think about this specialist? You know, I mean, like those kinds of questions. It was just such a gift. And so from there, I really, again, with the listening, tried to start thinking about, well, is there a support group I should attend? What is this? What does my gut say? Is it? And slowly I cultivated the people in my life. And then the podcast came to be because I realized I liked, as a kid, I pretended that I was a radio DJ. I just liked that. I like telling stories, but also not everyone had the community that I had. I knew there are a lot of women that there aren't people around them, or they can't get out, or they hadn't found, or maybe you do have a massive community, but you're in a hotel room or a hospital room at 3 a.m. and you want to pop in some earbuds and hear a story that sounds like yours. So that's where the idea came, but it originated with that nurse, because had I not known the power of connection, and I knew when that nurse handed me pamphlets, for months, I would just hold those in my hands and think about her out there and go, in those really scary moments, go, somebody else is doing this. You know, Mary Susan, somebody else is doing this. It's okay. And I thought if I could somehow provide that in an audio format, then that would be really fun. And so that's a very long answer, but essentially that's all those meetings is what made me decide that it was such a powerful thing in my life that maybe it could be fun. And I mentioned it to Sean, and I said, maybe in 10 years when AB's in high school or something, I could do this. And he was like, 10 years. He was like, I'm going on the road tonight. I'm going to set you up a little studio. I think you should start this evening. And I was like, oh, okay, that's a better idea. So that's how it
and
started.
I'm so grateful. Because it enters Mary Susan into my life. And that was 2018 that you started the podcast. April, right? April-ish.
Yes.
And April ish of 2018, Kyle and Tara Hutton, adopted 2 little girls.
Mm-hmm.
And so while Kyle and I have been huge fans of Sean's for well, I don't even know when he first came to well, I don't know if he first came to Texas, but he did a show with Wade. It was a songwriter. It was a songwriter in the round. I don't remember who the third person was, but Wade and Sean. And we sat there and were just like, nobody wanted to follow Sean in the round. Like nobody. They're like, I ain't following him. Blown away with his music. So we became fans of Sean's, and in 2018 I became a fan of yours because it was beautiful to hear your story. And Kyle had been following, I guess maybe I don't know how he came, he I guess Instagram, because I'm terrible at Instagram, so he must have seen it on Instagram. And he comes a Saturday morning, brings his computer into this office right here, which used to be his. It had guitars on this wall. I replaced it with a Brene Brown quote. But he says, Tara, sit down on this couch and I want you to listen to this. Don't get up until it's over. I'm shutting the doors. I got the girls. Sit down and listen. He said, you're supposed to do this. And he's a little quicker to the show on listening to himself and taking the courage to act than I am. But I sat down and I listened and I heard your story and I connected with, because at that time in my life, it was really like, it had gotten real. Like this is now what started as fostering, which is what all of our paperwork said, foster only. Like in our mind, we were just going to stand in the gap for, and try to minister to some birth moms so they can get their babies back. And that's kind of the entry point for us. But in April of 2018, it became final, and 2 little girls became our daughters permanently, forever. And I'm so grateful, but I was also so terrified.
Yeah.
And so to hear you talking about, I don't know, you're brave. You were being brave. And Kyle was right. There has been something inside me that I first expressed back in 2003. It's in writing that I longed to come alongside other women in a shared journey. And so to hear you doing it and stepping out in that way was so inspiring. It was so inspiring, yet I was still too afraid. Because 2018, 2019, then it wasn't until 2020 when you were offering a coaching opportunity, because you'd moved from podcast host to coach for moms like me. And again, Kyle says, Tara, you're going to apply for this. I want you to apply. And I did. And that's when you really entered my life in a really very short window, but very powerful one. And so, thank you, because you said to me, you can do this. You can do this.
I mean, thank you. I remember getting in the car, because this was the middle of 2020, and so quarantine and my daughter's inside, so my office at the time became Sean's Subaru. So I would go out there where I could get some quiet. And I remember the first conversation I had with you, I just got chills. I mean, I had chills even after we hung up the phone, because I just knew I could see you doing. This is why that first conversation last week that we had was so powerful for me, was because it was this recognition of, we get in the fog of like our daily lives. But when I was talking to you, I realized, oh my gosh, what you and I both knew, and what Kyle knew, that you should do, could do, would be so fantastic at, have such a natural gifts in these areas. What I envisioned you doing in that first conversation that we ever had while I'm sitting parked under a tree in a Subaru is what you are doing. And you've done 50 episodes in a really short amount of time.
Yeah.
I mean, in a really short amount of time. And so it was just such a beautiful, like, whoa, oh my gosh. Yes. When you started what you're doing now, it was just such a connection of like what you said, how you knew, I think you said it was 2003
Mm-hmm.
up till now, and how that grows, and how what gifts you offer are changing people's lives. They're changing women's lives, which then changes families' lives. And by you saying yes to that, to that knowing inside of you, to the gifts that you have, it's such a powerful thing, and it's such a gift for everybody. So thank you for doing what you're doing and listening. I mean,
Yeah.
it's scary, but thank you for doing it.
Yeah. You know, sometimes when you're like me and you're learning to trust yourself, I mean, we're all on a continued journey of learning to trust ourselves and hear that still small voice. But sometimes you have to rely on someone else's voice.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I was doing with you. You know,
Mm-hmm.
when I would hear you say, you were made for this. What's stopping you? What are you afraid of? What's the resistance? You know, all those things, those questions that you would ask me. And then, you know, compassionately let me express what they were, but then not give them power, you know? And I think that sometimes, like, to move from our place of fear or whatever it is, we have to sometimes rely on another person. And I think that
Mm-hmm.
that's what you offered me and what you're offering a lot of women now in your coaching practice is, you know, let me see for you something you're struggling to see for yourself right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm really grateful because this does, while it's still very scary, you know, every time you put an episode out there, like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, it's so vulnerable, you know, like, it's like, oh my gosh, I just said that. I just said all of this. I might not even feel that same thing 2 years from now, but I put it
Right.
out there. It's in the
Right.
world for
Right.
someone else. But you know what? I'm learning that's not my job to decipher what I say. That's someone else's. They may hear it
Right.
totally different. It may be exactly what they need. It may make them mad. It may make them so mad
Mm-hmm.
they dig down and find something really juicy about themselves or about the world or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not my job to do that. And so this exercise, while I hope that it is beneficial to other people, it is quite powerful for me. And
Mm-hmm.
you're right. This is episode 50. Can you believe it?
I can believe it. That's what is so fantastic is after we hung up last week, I like walked around the studio and walked around the house, and I was like, I can believe it. I mean, it's not a surprise. It's not. Nothing in it is a surprise. I knew if you said yes and if you walk towards it, this is it. You know, like that's not a surprise at all.
Yeah.
So it's just really exciting to celebrate it and to witness it. I mean, it really is.
Well, I think it's important because moms, you know, I've been a mom for 24 years now. My oldest is 24, and I was 28 when he was born. And is that right? 24, 28. He's about to be 24. So that's probably right, isn't it? 50. Oh, well, I'm not good
I
at
used to be a
math.
math teacher, and I don't know where all those skills went.
Anyway, point is, you know, I think that we can get really lost in being a mom. I mean,
Oh yeah.
really lost because it is
Mm-hmm.
so big and it is so like it's the biggest thing we've ever done to
Mm-hmm.
launch a human being into the world. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, that's huge,
It's huge.
you know, and
Mm-hmm.
then I got five, you know,
Yeah, that's
and
real big.
and so wow, you know, and so I've found myself super lost. And part of
Mm-hmm.
the fear that held me back is you know, and this is some of the things you talk about on Mama Bear podcast, and we talk about here, mom as well. Boy, isn't that cute?
I
Mamas,
love it. I've
mamas,
always
two
loved it.
mamas. But when we give to ourselves, which can feel like, oh my gosh, it's like the scarcity mentality of like, if we give to ourselves, then we must be taking from someone else. Like,
Right.
we can't, but really there's this abundance. And that it actually, when we give here, like this abundance just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And there's more of me. There's more of me instead of less of me.
Yes.
And so I think that's really profound, and just to encourage other moms. You know, I think sometimes when we are the most overwhelmed and the most lost in our stories in our head is when we really need to step back and slow down, not speed up and go faster, which is what I used to do.
Right.
And so I'm really grateful for that. And that just kind of brings me, and I just want to, you know, maybe this is a good place to kind of wrap all this together, but Sean just released a new album called A Horrible, Beautiful Dream. I don't know if there's any other phrase that could describe what we've just been talking about today. And
I agree.
You know, I almost think you say, you know, I read another book after my dad's suicide, and it was called The Beauty of Broken. Similar concept, I think, as to what Sean's saying, but could almost be redefining horrible. Like, is horrible really horrible? Or is it all really just beautiful? You know, like if we set into a checklist of all the things you literally chose in your life. Like, very few people would say, ooh, that's so, wow. You know?
Right.
And yet it's the thing that has brought it all together. So talk about that a little bit. The Horrible, Beautiful Dream. I mean, you know, if you haven't listened to any of Sean's music, like, oh my gosh, finish listening to this and click over to iTunes and look him up.
Yes.
Powerful
mean,
stuff.
The Horrible, Beautiful Dream, he wrote most of it and recorded all of it here on the farm during the pandemic and being off the road. So it really is an interesting piece of time for him to have had that art come out. But that being said, there was so much of it that for me, I related to, even with, like, he has one song called Price of Love, and he mentions a conversation he was having with his mom about how hard parenting can be, and how he walks into Abby's bedroom at night and, you know, to check that she's breathing, and just the real kind of facts of parenthood. And she was like, oh, that's nothing new. I did that with you, and in my own way I still do. And it's like, oh my gosh. I mean, I just think, and then he was in the song, he's upset because he's on the road and he's missing us, he's missing home. And she was like, aren't you so glad you have them to miss? Like, that's the price of love. And I think for me, that kind of, you know, I remember him playing that and me just like hitting the floor and going, oh my gosh. Because it just resonated in such a powerful way. And then for the video, this was the first time that Abby and I had decided, or, you know, participated in a video, and they used a lot of home footage, and it was really way more than we typically share, especially him. And it was a really beautiful experience. It really was. And she loved being in a music video, and she thinks she's all of her teachers asked her, are you famous? And she looked a big yes. She was like, oh yeah, I'm famous.
She is famous.
I said, do you like it? And she was like, oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. No, it's beautiful. You don't get to experience that. I mean, there is a risk. I printed the lines out This is the chorus. Nothing good comes for free, honey. You got to pay your dues. When you've got everything to lose. Some people never find it. Thank the Lord above that you got a heart falling apart. That's just the price of love. Gosh, you got to watch the video. We'll put a link in the show notes. But I think that's what we've been talking about today. I think we've been talking about the hard things, choosing the hard things, because we've cultivated this voice. We've cultivated a listening to a still small voice, and we've learned to trust it, and we've learned to follow it, even though it doesn't make sense.
Right.
And from that, like, so much beauty comes. And I don't know, it feels horrible, some of it in the moment, when we're in the pandemic. And I mean, I don't know, people who aren't musicians don't get it, but I mean, there's a whole, like, you still have buses, and you still have bands, and you still have, I mean, everything. And when you don't play, you don't make money, and your promoter doesn't make money, and your manager doesn't make money, and the venues don't make money, and the staging guys and the light guys. I mean, none of these people had work. And that's been
like
probably
that, with
like
no warning.
that. Yeah. And so that felt pretty horrible. But of course, in Sean's lens, he dug in, and he found the beautiful. And I think that's what raising children with profound needs, that's the gift. It can, when people say, bless your heart, oh, you're just such an angel, you're just so wonderful, I don't know how you do it. Like, I hear them, and I want to say, I don't know how I do it sometimes, but you have no idea what it's given me.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I can look back and say that about the deaths of both my parents now too, which is something I thought I remember specifically thinking, I won't survive if something happens to my parents. And I have a little daughter who expresses that fear. My youngest daughter, she'll say sometimes just out of the blue, Mom, I'm just thinking scary thing right now. I'm just thinking a scary thing. And I'll say, what is it? It's about dying. I don't know what I'll do without you. She'll say, I don't know what I'll do without you. But I have something to tell her now. And I say, I acknowledge that fear. I say, I know that. That is so scary. I didn't know what I would do without my mom, but God showed up for me. And even when I thought I couldn't do something, he's shown me I can. So, because I could just say, oh, I'm here now. You don't have to worry about that. But that doesn't acknowledge her fear.
Right.
And it doesn't remind her that she will find inner strength when she needs it.
Right. It's true. It's true.
Yeah.
It's true.
Gosh. This was a great conversation. Did we miss anything from our first conversation?
I don't think so.
Yeah. Well, tell everybody what you're doing now, because I want them to be able to get in touch with you. And there's probably people out there that are saying, man, they're so brave. She's so brave. I want some of that. And then I could say, well, call Mary Susan. So she can stand for you when you're needing some help, needing someone to hold your hand. So what are you doing right now?
Right now, the podcast is happening. Mom Bear Podcast. You can find it on iTunes, Spotify. Has the big, as of now, the logo is still the big grizzly bear. And then I do, on occasion, open up my calendar for one-on-one and what I call empower hours, or it's a 1-hour conversation, or occasionally I offer 4-week intensives again. So if you're on my mailing list, which you can do at marysusanmcconnell.com, you'll know when those are about to happen, and you can grab a slot if you want one. And then I also have a monthly membership where women get a 5 to 10 minute episode delivered straight to their phone on an app every single morning, Monday through Friday. And I record it morning of. So this morning I was talking about the rain and the trees that got blown down, what we're having to chop up here on the farm. And then we talk about like a challenge, a creative challenge or a reflection to bring it back to us where we are on our own calendar, because I know the minutia and the tasks can just totally at least for me, overwhelm me if I don't bring real intention. So every single day that's there, and I love that. And they stay for 2 weeks. So I kind of think of it like a radio show that expires. So you don't have to hop on every day. Some people kind of bank them and listen to 3 at a time or whatnot. So that's available at my website as well. You can become a member there. And then I've got a lot of free stuff. I've got a free coloring book that's inclusive that I made with the illustrator. I wanted my daughter to see herself in literature. You can print that off as many times as you want, totally free. And I've got a free blank master folder template. I've got all sorts of stuff that hopefully is helpful. Just stuff that I have found helpful that I'm sharing, and I love it. But the membership right now is really such a joy in my life. I have so much fun seeing what people are doing every single day, and it's less than $1 a day. And I think it's a really great investment in yourself to have something show up every single day that is not for anybody else but you.
That's right. That's right. Well, Mary Susan, thank you. Thank you for 2 sessions. One was just all for me.
So fun. And me.
This one we're going to get to share. So I appreciate it. You are amazing.
You are.
I owe so much to you, and just really grateful. So go hug your.
I'm grateful. And happy 50 everything. 50th episode.
I'm older
50th
and
birthday.
wiser. And this is I think this is the second half of my life.
Yeah.
And
how fun.
It feels amazing. So
how fun.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Hey, and I'm headed to Mexico.
Yes.
Doesn't get better than that.
Go. Have fun.
All right. Thank you,
Enjoy
Mary
the sun.
Susan. All right. You take care, girl. See you soon. Bye. Thanks, Mary Susan. That was a great conversation. So powerful as always. Every time I sit down with you, I am always inspired. And thank you for reminding us that we all have that still small voice, that voice that we can trust and cultivate that learning to trust, because sometimes we are in situations, or we are asked to move into situations that are so much bigger than ourselves, and to know that that we do have that wisdom inside of us. That's powerful. So thank you for reminding us of that. Thank you guys for listening. I hope that if you don't have a community, that you are seeking that out, and that you are looking for that. I hope that you are loving yourself and giving yourself the time that you need, so that you can fuel up, so that you're not stuck in that scarcity mentality, but in the abundance mentality, that mentality that says, I have everything I need, and I can do this. So keep going, give yourself a hug, and we'll see you next week.
Mama's well.
Yes, she is.